My name is Curtis Vanderschaff, and I'm the Southwest Regional Forestry Extension Specialist with Mississippi State University in Raymond. And this video is a presentation of my extension and research activities during 2023. Much of my extension activities are focused on pine silviculture and income improvement, and that's my statewide program is income improvement, reducing reforestation costs and providing market opportunities, growth in yield, understanding how various management activities impact yields, and how not just timber, but also understory vegetation, wildlife habitat, could even be water yield, the development of timber decision support systems to help foresters and landowners and even loggers or legislators have a better idea of management of trade-offs or management trade-offs between management practices and objectives, and obtaining more statistically accurate, temporally shorter, and more financially feasible estimates of forest resources is part of my extension, but also part of my research, as well as helping landowners, foresters, loggers, and legislators, and mills. But the three-legged stool, you could say, the landowner, logger, and mill, the importance of all of them to the wood supply chain. And if you take one of them out, then you lose the ability, basically, then to conduct management, and the importance of loggers to forestry, forest management. Without loggers, forestry basically becomes carbon sequestration and managing to reduce fire risk, wildfire risk. So this year, I've concentrated a lot on growth and yield of pine and timber decision support systems. A lot of work with forest carbon markets. Unfortunately, the Natural Capital Exchange went away. It's a one-year contract with minimal acreages. And that now is creating issues for Mississippi landowners because many of the contracts are now 40 or 100 years because of permanence issues, longer contracts. A lot of work with pine reforestation and mid-rotation management activities, a lot of contacts, questions from people and presentations. I established a pine species trial to help with workshop opportunities, but unfortunately the drought created major issues, and basically mortality, survival rates are about 1% for longleaf and about 8% for loblolly. But this is a longleaf in May 20th, 2 months, basically 2 months after it was planted, already kind of getting into the candlebrush stage, and that's too bad. So by October, November, survival was really bad. And then a lot of work with logging operations with the Hines Community College Logger Education Program, as well as folks from the University of Georgia. But around 6,900 direct contacts and about more than 74,000 indirect contacts. I wrote an article with The Conversation about artificial Christmas trees versus real Christmas trees and which one was more sustainable, and so I got a lot of contacts from that. But you can see I worked on a lot of issues, a variety of issues with landowners this past year. And then, of course, something I didn't really plan on was Ips beetles and the drought that we had, basically mid-July to November, October, basically no rain, literally no rain. And of course, that drought, extreme drought, creates low vigor pine trees, which is perfect habitat for Ips, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But this was devastating in southwest Mississippi and took up a lot of my time. And then income taxes, which I'm happy about because I've worked a lot with income taxes during my career, and I'm interested in working more with it. I helped with the Rankin County Forest Association short course. I did a presentation and also created some videos, and then I posted a news post with Mississippi State Extension. So I had around 250 site visits, in-person conversations on a variety of issues this past year. Conducted 47 professional presentations, many of them County Forestry Association presentations, as well as field days, 4 of them virtual presentations, and then 3 workshops, one of which was the Rankin County Tax Workshop. And 3 of those talks were in the Northeast because at that time that position was not filled. It's since been filled, Northeast Mississippi. And 3 continuing forestry education meetings and a landowner forestry presentation in Oklahoma. I was invited by Oklahoma State University. And 1 CFA talk about forest carbon markets. So a lot of work with forest carbon markets. 6 poster presentations, 4 at Mississippi PAC meetings. and then 2 professional presentations, research settings, more presentations as well, and then the 4-H Project Achievement Day for our youth. So around 1,100 contacts in these presentations. Published 4 peer-reviewed extension publications in Mississippi State. Remember, these are extension publications, so it's not necessarily a journal peer review. And then an article or an extension publication about sealing nurseries, helping people know where they can purchase a variety of species. 15 newsletter articles, and then 21 news postings with Mississippi State, AgCom, as well as a variety of other outlets. 10 extension articles with FOSHI, with Penn State, which is a Penn State-led carbon for forest landowners and foresters in the eastern U.S. Universities all across, about 15, I think, universities in the east. And then 1 extension publication with Auburn about carbon. And then produced several unofficial documents, summary documents. These are where the landowners or the foresters, the situation I'm working on requires a little more documentation, and it provides them a means to have a written documentation for whatever they're trying to do. So I do those about usually 5 to 10, maybe 15 a year, and produced around 28 videos on many aspects of forestry, about 1,050 views, and then 8 conference proceedings, and 4 peer-reviewed journal articles, 1 article I mentioned in the conversation about Christmas trees, and then 3 radio interviews, including KCBS in San Francisco and 1 in British Columbia. And I also had a Journal of Forestry cover. That's my picture there for one of the issues. So forest health, so IPS, we had this drought, as I said, mid-July to October, and that just devastated this region here. I received, I don't know, at least 50, if not 100 phone calls, emails, texts, requesting information about IPS. Started doing quite a bit with the county agents, helping them have a better understanding of IPS. So IPS is the big problem. I'm going to show you here in just a second. We did have some issues with southern pine beetle here in Homochitto, near the Homochitto, but IPS beetles, and especially in yards, just the perfect condition for IPS, that drought, reducing pine vigor. And as I said, we did see some issues with southern pine beetle this past year, related, basically highly correlated with the national forest. Why? Well, generally these national forests are going to have older trees, meaning in general they're going to manage a little older, plus they're going to generally have a little higher stand densities. I'm not sure management is as active as, say, industry or NIPF family forest. So we had some issues with southern pine beetle there, but the rest of the issues was IPS, and we had serious issues with IPS. Maybe sometimes you see 5 or 6 dead trees. Well, we're seeing spots where you have 50, 60, 70 dead trees due to IPS. And that's just pretty, not very common. So then related to that is the mountain pine beetle. And so they're having issues, say, in British Columbia, especially, but other provinces as well, Alberta, and then even like Ontario. But a lot of companies from Canada moving south because of the mountain pine beetle, as well as wildfire. There's a trade tariff issue going on with the U.S. because they believe some of the lumber is subsidized coming out of British Columbia that's imported into the U.S. And, of course, that's hurting our landowners here, and then regulatory issues there. So this is companies that are headquartered in Canada. Now, they may have some branch here in the U.S. now, but they were originally, I believe, all from Canada. Norbord, Resolute, and Conifex, they were bought out by some of these other folks here. This is over the last 20 years, that influx from Canada down southeast, and new mills, but also helping to keep current mills open. And that's really helping with our stumpage values, at least more than if we didn't have that investment. So that is really positive for us, maybe not a positive for them. Here's an example of, then we have Chroma Strand, and I believe they're out of, this is an oriented strand board plant in Alabama. They're out of Romania. So this international investment into what many people say is, if not the breadbasket of the world, a breadbasket of the world, the Southeast U.S. Also, growth rates, right? We have better growth rates generally, higher growth rates. Now, our stand densities may not be as high, but our growth rates are often better here as well. Here's North American lumber. You can see the U.S. South, and this is largely loblolly pine, increasing over time. And, of course, Canada is decreasing over time. So housing starts, and, of course, 22, mortgage rates are really high, inflation, so houses are probably more expensive, plus the mortgage rates are higher. And so that's leading to issues with housing starts. And I just saw here, U.S. housing starts see the biggest drop since April 2020. I saw that yesterday. So that's creating issues. So in the past, there was usually a pretty strong correlation between housing starts and lumber prices and then saw timber stumpage. And since many people believe, how do you say it, pulpwood is a kind of a come-along product with saw logs, you're growing trees for saw logs, and then pulpwood's kind of an intermediate to that saw log stumpage, then in some ways you had the pulpwood markets. Well, now we're seeing, probably because of an oversupply, we are not seeing that strong correlation anymore between lumber prices and saw log stumpage. So many people in the Southeast, loggers and foresters, complained how the lumber prices that just went out the roof in 2021, 2022, they never really saw that. And of course, that's now come down quite a bit. But the Pacific Northwest did see a little bit of a jump in the stumpage prices. I think Georgia did as well, but Mississippi and most of the Southeast didn't. Why Georgia? Maybe North Carolina, Florida, a little bit of a jump. Well, they usually have, their stumpage prices are a little better than ours, and they usually have a little more mills. So we look here, this is 1985 and this is 2000. I believe this is a lot of CRP. So we probably have an overabundant supply of wood. And this carrying forward, say to like 2015 or so, and maybe the clear cut here from this impacting the thinnings from here. And so we are seeing where we probably have an overabundant supply. So the response is not as high, it's not as well correlated. Hopefully we can get back to, there's some amount of correlation, but I think the high lumber prices may have ended that trend. So let's talk about mills here. Some of these are now, I don't know about if they're new anymore because they're going on 3, 4, or 5 years, but certainly a lot of investment relatively recently here in the South, here in Mississippi, I should say, and that are going to impact at some level the Southwest. Then of course we have Huber here in Shackalack, hopefully I'm saying that right. And it does cross Italian and leak a little bit into Scott, but that may even trickle down. Kind of the competition here may even help a little bit here for demand here, given that there's more competition here, you could argue. So, but Gloucester should be coming on, and I've seen a recent announcement for a procurement forester with Gloucester and Stella Jones, which should be up here in Durant, which is, I believe, largely poles. And so those are certainly new markets for us going forward. And then Beaumont had I think they had a tornado, and that should be, they're going to rebuild that. I think it's going to be bigger, so that'll be a little bit of impact to us, hopefully. And then here, Hood Industries also had a problem with fire in Bogalusa. So I think they're now, I'm not sure what exactly the status is of that, but you would assume they would get some lumber coming out of Bogalusa going to Hood. Now, what's the problem with Enviva? So everybody may have heard of Enviva. They're in trouble, so that may hurt us in Bond. The new mill proposed in Bond there, as well as Loosedale. So who knows what's going to happen there. And then the European Union, I've heard, they're going to put tighter restrictions. They're going to put tighter restrictions on the sourcing of wood for these pellets and biomass in general. How that's going to impact these markets. So we certainly have some good news, but once again, you guys, a lot of these are sawmills, and then they're going to have sawmill residuals, and so they may further compete with our poor pulpwood, roundwood, stumpage prices. And so hopefully some of these biomass and then like the engineered wood, OSB, will help with the demand for pulpwood. So we lost our Hinds County Logger Education Program, at least temporarily, and I've been told that they now hopefully will fill that position soon, so that'll be great. Our logging owners and logging force is generally getting older, so we need to make sure that we train people so that 10 or 15 years from now we don't have major issues. There's some other things to consider. The Cogan grass in the south part here, I believe, the SPB cost share for thinnings. Make sure landowners take advantage of the federal reforestation tax deduction and amortization provisions, the tax credit with the state, and then the capital gains tax rate. So I believe if you own timber for a year and a day, longer than a year and a day, it's long-term capital gain. So you could potentially, for example, be, rather than taxed at the ordinary income tax rate of 22%, tax at the capital gains of 15%. So the gross vehicle weight, I think, went up to 88,000 pounds with a harvest permit for trucks. That should maybe help with our log trucking force, which is extremely important to forestry. I'm starting to see a little more dedicated log trucking, for instance, J.B. Hunt, where drivers are being contracted out by loggers, and these drivers are employed by these large over-the-road agencies, nothing to do with logging. So that could impact our more smaller independent owner-operators. That's a situation that's kind of interesting. And then white oak stumpage, you guys, that's really been taken off if you've seen. That's kind of interesting. Then there's some disaster assistance potentially from FSA and then NRCS code 666, which is odd, for forest stand improvement thinnings, after talking with some folks from NRCS. If you want to know more about those, let me know. So from last year, Mass Timber, I did an extension article about cross-laminated timber. I'm hoping to do more. Taxes, I've already mentioned I got involved in that, and I'm happy to do that because of personnel issues. And in carbon markets, I did a lot of work with carbon markets this past year. And I've already mentioned that. And then invasives. So I did Dr. Brady Self did a presentation at the Franklin County Forestry Association. Thank you.